We mentioned this in our previous video, but it needs repeating. Bill Russell once said, "Concentration and mental toughness are the margins of victory." In MotoGP 2025, both margins were shredded, one by Marc Márquez's perfection, the other by Ducati's indecision. Pecco Bagnaia's concentration didn't just fade, it was smashed to fragments by a man who thrives in chaos. His mental toughness wasn't broken by crashes or critics, but by 11 months of silent betrayal from the garage that was supposed to protect him. Many spoke, many denied. We watched everything. The whispers, the press smiles, the telemetry excuses. We waited for the day when the truth would surface. That day has come. Luigi Dall'Igna finally admits it. Bagnaia was right all along about Ducati's 2025 bike. But before anyone can celebrate vindication, Jorge Lorenzo walks in and detonates the room. Because when a man who once shared a pit wall with Márquez speaks, you listen. And his verdict is brutal. What demoralizes you isn't the talk, it's when you take off your helmet and see your teammate half a second faster. The battlefield shifts. Pecco's not just losing to a bike, he's losing to physics, politics, and the echo of a ghost that rides faster than pain. The 2025 season began in Thailand, a humid oven of tension disguised as a race weekend. Inside Ducati's glass palace, the air was colder than the air conditioning, because this was the year Marc Márquez joined the factory team, and not as a test mule, as a threat. Bagnaia entered the season not as reigning champion, but as the shadow of one. He'd surrendered the 2024 crown to Jorge Martin, and while the world thought this season would be his redemption, the truth was simpler. Ducati had changed the formula. The GP25 was a creature born of wind tunnels and overconfidence. A bike that stopped speaking the same language as its rider. Pecco complained of the front end from Sepang tests. Ducati called it adaptation. 11 races later, that adaptation turned into a slow bleed of points, crashes, and confusion. Then came the arrival, Márquez, the hurricane disguised as a smile. Same bike, same data, same track, different outcome, domination. From the opening rounds, Márquez treated the GP25 like an instrument built for war. He wasn't adjusting to it, he was rewriting its limits. 5 wins in the first 6 rounds, lap records rewritten like graffiti. The man who once fought physics with a broken shoulder now bent Ducati to his will. In contrast, Bagnaia looked like a man reciting a lost prayer. He overbraked, underturned, complained of no feeling, no trust. The same front that gave Márquez confidence gave Pecco fear. And that's where the fracture began. Not in the standings, but in the silence between pit walls. Every debrief turned into therapy. Every setup meeting dragged for hours. Telemetry told one story, emotion told another. Pecco wasn't slow, he was uncertain. Then came Jorge Lorenzo's hook, a warning from someone who'd lived through this fire. He said it plainly. It's not the talk that kills you, it's when you remove your helmet and see your teammate a half-second faster. That line haunted Ducati's garage like static in the comms. Lorenzo had fought Márquez before, both as rival and teammate. He knew what it meant when speed itself becomes psychological warfare. You stop improving and start comparing. Every 10th becomes personal. By the time the paddock reached Mugello, Bagnaia's body language said what words wouldn't. Shoulders heavy, eyes distant, helmet down early. Meanwhile, Márquez, fresh off another win, spoke like a man dictating history. We are just getting started with this bike. The engineers stopped whispering to Pecco. They started observing Márquez. When your own factory begins studying your teammates' data instead of fixing yours, the war is already lost. The build-up was a masterpiece of slow torture. Ducati tried to balance politics and performance, but the truth was visible in one stat. By the halfway mark, Márquez had won 25 races, including sprints, and sealed the title at Motegi with 5 rounds still to go. Pecco? One proper victory. Motegi itself, the one weekend Ducati gave him GP24 parts. Proof that he wasn't delusional, just unheard. If the rider's feedback wins a race and the factory still ignores him, who's really leading the project? The engineer or the ego? Comment your verdict. In Jerez, Márquez crashed, rejoined, and still clawed 4 points, a recovery that screamed defiance. Bagnaia, stuck behind Fabio Quartararo, unable to break through. Different problems, same bike. The contrast was too sharp to ignore. In Le Mans, rain turned the circuit into chaos. Márquez pitted twice, switched compounds, still finished second behind Zarco. Pecco crashed on his own in turn 3, lost front again, same complaint. Every time Ducati's press department wrote setup issue, Pecco's faith shrank another inch. By Assen, the cracks became earthquakes. Márquez's telemetry was clean, minimal lean correction, consistent front brake stability. Pecco's data was jittering like a heart monitor. He could feel the difference. Ducati could see it. But nobody said it aloud. Marc is the benchmark now. At Silverstone, Bagnaia begged for front-end changes. He asked for GP24's stiffness ratio on the forks. Ducati delayed, claiming 2026 testing priority. Translation: Marc's setup is the priority. By Mandalika, the script was written. Marc sealed the constructor's title by sheer dominance. Pecco crashed out, again citing zero feedback from the front, 11 months of the same ghost chasing him into every corner. And yet the factory still said, "We believe the base is right." Motegi came like a mercy killing. Ducati quietly installed older GP24 parts on Pecco's machine. The difference? Immediate. He won both races, sprint and main, cleanly, fluidly, like the Pecco of 2022 reborn. And for a brief moment, everyone forgot the pain. But the next round in Mandalika reminded them, 2 DNFs back-to-back. That was the battlefield summary of Bagnaia's 2025. A rider who knew exactly what he needed, told everyone, proved it once, and still got drowned in politics. Meanwhile, Márquez was rewriting human limits. He led the championship by 259 points when he got injured. 5 races still remained, title already in his pocket. That's what demoralization looks like. Not defeat, but irrelevance. If 2 riders on identical machines create opposite realities, do we blame the bike or the belief? Drop your verdict below. Lorenzo's prophecy returned like a punchline from hell. He told AS, "What really gets to you is when you take off your helmet, look at the times, and see that your teammate has beaten you by half a second or a second." That's not analysis. That's anatomy. Because what Pecco was feeling wasn't defeat, it was decomposition. He didn't fear Márquez the man. He feared what Márquez exposed. That feeling is not just mechanical, it's mental. If the same bike behaves differently for 2 riders, you start questioning yourself before the engineers. That's the psychological warfare Lorenzo was describing. Not words, but lap times. Bagnaia went from champion material to case study. Every interview grew shorter, every podium handshake colder. He wasn't angry anymore. He was numb. Lorenzo compared it to his 2012 season with Ben Spies. When I was clearly faster, Ben started losing his composure. That's what's happening now with Pecco. Those words landed like bullets in Bologna. The Ducati factory didn't even try to deny it. Instead, they pivoted, quietly reorganizing their 2026 development structure around Márquez. Bagnaia's crew felt it immediately. The meetings were shorter, the questions fewer. Marc had become not just the faster rider, but the development compass. And that's when the internal collapse became public. Pecco started hinting at frustration in subtle phrases, "I can only do what the bike allows." Translated, they stopped listening. Dall'Igna's later admission that Pecco was right all along came too late. The damage was done. 11 months of disbelief, 11 months of comparison, 11 months of losing faith in your own feel. Davide Brivio summarized it coldly. Until Pecco becomes one with his bike again, he cannot fight Marc. That sentence might as well have been carved on Ducati's red walls. Inside Pecco's head, Lorenzo's prophecy kept looping. Every helmet removal, every data debrief, the same reflection. Márquez's time faster by half a second. And when speed becomes a recurring insult, even champions lose clarity. By Sepang, Ducati management had started floating new options. VR46 seat, maybe 2026 realignment? The whispers weren't rumors, they were safety nets. Because the question inside the paddock wasn't, can Pecco recover? It was, will Ducati even let him? When a factory prioritizes a superstar's direction over the rider who built their foundation, is it evolution or betrayal? Comment your answer below. Let's strip away the smoke. Bagnaia's downfall wasn't about talent, it was about trust. The GP25 was Ducati's engineering overreach. Too much front load, too little compliance. Marc Márquez could manage it because his style has always been chaos-friendly. Pecco, precise and line-based, needed predictability. One bike rewarded improvisation, the other punished consistency. The result was visible in their statistics. By Motegi, Márquez, 25 wins, sprints included, title sealed with 5 races left. Bagnaia, 1 double win, Motegi, multiple DNFs, 4th in standings, 259 points behind. This wasn't a rivalry, it was a psychological experiment Ducati didn't know it was conducting. And now, 2026 looks like a crossroads. Márquez's injury won't change his authority. The engineers will still follow his notes. Pecco knows that. The paddock knows that. Even VR46 whispers it. Maybe he should come home, away from the corporate leash. But here's the cruel twist. Pecco's validation came the moment Dall'Igna said, he was right. It's the hollow kind of victory. The kind that arrives after the season has already buried you. He was right, but he wasn't heard. He was right, but he wasn't trusted. He was right, but Márquez still holds the title. That's what demoralization means in MotoGP terms. Not weakness, but exhaustion from being correct in the wrong timeline. And yet, there's a pulse of defiance left. Bagnaia isn't done. He's just scarred. Every time Ducati praises Marc, it's a reminder that Bagnaia bled for that project long before the Spaniard wore red. If 2026's GP26 follows Márquez's feedback entirely, it might alienate the very DNA that made Ducati a champion manufacturer in the first place. So the question shifts. Is Ducati building the ultimate bike or the ultimate one-rider machine? Because history shows when you tailor perfection for one man, you doom yourself when he leaves. Has Ducati forgotten who rebuilt their empire after 2020? Is Pecco's fall the price of worshipping Márquez's genius? And if every great teammate ends up demoralized, who's really the problem? The rider being beaten or the system that celebrates destruction? We don't have answers yet, but we have too many questions to ignore. Because right now, nobody in Bologna is saying they'll make Pecco's bike ready. They're quietly suggesting he leave or adapt alone. This is the story of 2025. One champion lost his feeling. Another weaponized it. And Ducati discovered that sometimes speed itself becomes the loudest insult. To see everything out of the box, remember, no one is offering Pecco a solution, only exits. Comment your verdict. Subscribe for more raw truths. The war isn't over, it just changed sides.